Rhonda Runningbird was born on November 22nd in Camrose, Alberta. Shortly thereafter, she and her mother moved back to the Siksika Nation to be with family. Shortly after she graduated high school, Rhonda met her first husband and had 2 children. A few years later, at a family party, she met Fred LeGrell, her aunt's husband. Not long after meeting, Rhonda and Fred left their spouses and moved in together in Red Deer, Alberta. Rhonda gave birth to their son in January 1994. On March 26, 1995, Fred, Rhonda, their 14-month-old son, and Fred's aunt went out on a hunting trip to Swan Lake, Alberta. Rhonda never came back from the trip. According to LeGrell, his truck had gotten stuck in the mud, and he had stormed off into the woods with his shotgun in frustration. When he came back after dark, Rhonda had left the truck to go for help. When LeGrell and his aunt finally found help 2 days later, Rhonda was reported missing, although Fred did not wait to show authorities where the truck had gotten stuck, and therefore where to start their search for Rhonda. The Royal Canadian Mounted Police did search for Rhonda, but after a few days, the medical examiner told them that Rhonda could not have survived for that long out in the woods on her own, and the search was called off. When Rhonda's family arrived to search for her, they had the first of many disrespectful and frustrating interactions with the RCMP. The first officer Rhonda's mother, Mavis Crowchild, spoke to told her that the reason they had not found her daughter was because she was off on the streets of Edmonton, getting drunk. Rhonda's family, in the course of their own search of the area, located a pair of glasses, an unused colostomy bag, and a pair of shoes, tied in a distinctive fashion, that they believed belonged to Rhonda. The RCMP told them that none of the items belonged to Rhonda. This was in part because the prescription of the lenses in the glasses did not match Rhonda's. However, the RCMP obtained Rhonda's prescription from an optometrist she was no longer seeing, and they refused to compare the glasses to records from her current optometrist. The idea that Rhonda walked off into the woods in the dark and got lost has also been highly contested by her family. According to family members who saw Rhonda just before the hunting trip, she was barely able to walk at the time. LeGrell was physically abusive towards Rhonda, with one of the beatings he inflicted on her being so severe that she had to use a colostomy bag as a result of the internal damage it caused. Rhonda was scheduled for surgery the day after she went missing to repair this damage and hopefully lessen her pain and improve her poor health. She had been gathering evidence to have LeGrell charged with assault, something he had learned just prior to her disappearance. Even if Rhonda had mustered the strength to go search for help, her family does not believe she would have gotten so lost in the woods that her body was never found. According to Mavis Crowchild, Rhonda had been trained since she was a child in how to make her way if she were lost. If Rhonda had been physically able to get out and walk for help, she surely would have been able to navigate back to the major road that was less than a mile from where the truck got stuck. The RCMP says that there is a person of interest in Rhonda's disappearance, but that person has since passed away, and that there is not enough evidence to determine if foul play was involved in Rhonda going missing. Fred LeGrell died in 2016. Rhonda's 2 oldest children were placed in Mavis Crowchild's custody 2 months after she went missing, and her son with LeGrell was eventually left with LeGrell's aunt. Neither Rhonda nor her remains have ever been located. In the fall of 1971, 16-year-old Janice Hannigan was a sophomore at White Swan High School and lived on the Yakima Reservation in Washington State. In November, Janice was selected as a candidate for Queen for the Intertribal Veterans Day ceremonial that was held in the town of Toppenish. She was featured in a newspaper article detailing her family, accomplishments, and hobbies. Despite her excitement at being a candidate for Queen, Janice was going through a difficult period of her life. Her parents had recently separated, and her 6 younger siblings had left their family home near Hara, Washington, with their mother to go live in the town of Buena. Janice had stayed behind to take care of their father. On December 21, 1971, Janice was admitted to the hospital with numerous contusions on her head and chest. She did not have any lingering neurological problems after a few days of being observed by doctors, and so she was discharged from the hospital on Christmas Eve, with her discharge papers stating that she was in satisfactory condition at the time. She has not been seen since. Many of the important records in Janice's case have been lost. While some of her medical records remain, they are incomplete. We do not even know what hospital she was treated at, and have no insight as to the cause of her injuries. Official documents contain errors which confuse the case. Several agencies list the date of Janice's disappearance as March 1st, 1971, 9 months prior to when she went missing. It is possible that this is because of a missing persons report filed for Janice when she traveled to Lewiston, Idaho, to attend a basketball game with her father in February. One of Janice's sisters, Trudy Lee Clark, was just 8 years old when Janice vanished. Her efforts to publicly advocate for Janice intensified after the death of their parents, and continued until her own death on December 23, 2018, the day before the 47th anniversary of Janice's disappearance. Roberta Marie Ferguson was born in 1968, the youngest of 9 children, in a family that belonged to the Dunvegan Beaver Band. The Ferguson siblings were bullied for their heritage and appearance, but they were all quick to stand up for themselves and their family. Roberta had been born with a heart defect that required her to take medication into her teenage years, but did not let her health problem hamper her independent and clever nature. In 1983, Roberta's beloved mother died of lupus. Roberta began having trouble paying attention in school, but did not rebel in reaction to her loss like many teenagers would have. She lived with her sisters Carol and Marilyn in Edmonton for a year before moving in with her sister Verl in Surrey, British Columbia. In late August 1988, 19-year-old Roberta went on a camping trip to the Sunnyside campground in Cultus Lake, roughly an hour east of her home in Surrey. She and 8 of her friends were celebrating the end of the summer work-study program they had participated in. On the evening of August 24th, Roberta, who had a fever, decided she wanted to go home. She either planned to make her way to the bus station or hitchhike the entire way home. Around 8 p.m., she left the camp with her backpack. Witnesses reported seeing a young woman matching Roberta's description, talking to a man with a prominent jaw in a red sports car along the road. Roberta has not been seen since. On the morning of August 26th, Roberta's sister Carol began the 15-hour drive from Fairview, Alberta, to Surrey to visit her sisters. She stopped 2 hours into the trip to call ahead to them and learned that Roberta could not be found. She continued to stop to call for updates from her family as she continued her trip to them. When they called the police that morning, they refused to take the missing persons report, since Roberta was an adult and had not yet been gone for 48 hours. The Ferguson family therefore spent Friday night printing missing persons flyers. They spent all of Saturday in Cultus Lake searching themselves and calling the Royal Canadian Mounted Police, unsuccessfully asking for help in the search. The family's relationship with the RCMP has evolved over the years. While the Fergusons initially had trouble getting them involved in the case, the RCMP does have an open file on Roberta. At times, the Fergusons would go years without hearing anything from the RCMP, but the newest officer assigned to the case has been more proactive in the case and communicates with the family regularly. 2 of Roberta's sisters provided their DNA in the early 2000s in hopes that it could help identify Roberta's remains if they are ever found. Roberta's sister Carol serves as the family's main contact with the RCMP. She keeps a picture of Roberta, smiling in a pink dress, on her refrigerator so that she sees it first thing in the morning. "43-year-old Valerie Sifsof of Anchorage, Alaska, planned to spend the weekend after Independence Day, 2012, camping with her boyfriend at the Granite Creek Campground in Moose Pass, Alaska. Their plans were disrupted around midnight of July 7th, when the couple got into an argument. According to her boyfriend, Valerie angrily walked away from their campsite. She never returned. She left behind all of her belongings, including her cell phone, keys, and identification. Her boyfriend says that he looked for her, but left the campground around noon the following day when he could not locate her. Valerie was not reported missing until July 11th. At that point, Alaska State Troopers began a search for her. Valerie's family also began a massive volunteer effort to find her. They put up flyers and canvassed the area themselves. Heavy rains hampered the search, and summer turned to autumn, but the family and volunteers who supported them pressed on, even after Valerie's brother and sister were injured after hitting a car with an ATV they were using in the search. The surrounding area was searched by boat and by helicopter, and search dogs were brought in to help. The volunteers were at one point joined by a group of infantrymen who had just returned home from Afghanistan. At the end of August, a kayaker discovered a green shirt in 6 Mile Creek, which runs behind the Granite Creek campground, approximately half a mile downstream. At the beginning of October, Valerie's family found a DKNY hooded sweatshirt in a log jam in 6 Mile Creek, not far from where the green shirt was located. These are believed to be some of the clothes Valerie was last seen wearing. She is pictured wearing her DKNY sweatshirt with a green shirt visible under the hem. Valerie was legally presumed dead in 2016, but neither she nor her body have ever been located. Shirley Lonethunder was born in January of 1966 and was the oldest of 5 children. She was originally from the White Bear First Nations in southeastern Saskatchewan, but her family spent periods of time also living in Saskatoon. In 1991, she was living there with her mother. Shirley was going through a difficult time, struggling with drug use and reportedly working in the sex trade to support her 2 children. She told her mother that she was going to start university the following year and would need her to watch the children while she was away at school. On Christmas Eve of 1991, Shirley left her mother's home to shop for presents. December 25th was not only Christmas, but her son's birthday as well. Shirley was seen out in downtown Saskatoon, but never returned home. Despite being known to police, Shirley has never reoffended or shown up in any police database. Serial killer John Martin Crawford has been named as a potential suspect by authorities, but according to Shirley's brother, their investigation into Shirley's disappearance has been minimal. Leona Kinsey was fiercely independent and took pride in how self-sufficient she could be. A member of the Puyallup tribe, she lived in rural LeGrand, Oregon. She would hunt animals and gather berries and mushrooms to feed herself, and chopped the firewood she needed to stay warm. Leona worked 3 jobs, as a landscaper, a housekeeper at a motel, and as a custodian, to pay for anything she could not do or make herself. On October 25th, 1999, Leona left her home to go grocery shopping at a nearby Albertsons. On her way home, she was supposed to stop at her friend Nancy's house. On October 26th, Leona's daughter Carolyn, who was living in Lacey, Washington, received a panic phone message from Nancy. Leona had never made it to her house after her shopping trip, and she could not be found. Leona's boyfriend Lonnie told police that he had seen her around 4:30 on the 25th, but friends also came forward, saying they had seen her at the same time, but at the local Walmart. On the morning of October 29th, Leona's light brown GMC Jimmy was found parked in the lot of the Albertsons she had been planning to go to on the 25th. The manager of the store did not believe that it had been there the night before. No clues were found inside of the vehicle. Leona's purse, pager, and cigarettes had all been left behind. Food had been left out to rot in her home, something Leona, who did not like anything to go to waste, would not have done. Leona's beloved dog and cat were also left at her home, and those close to Leona are certain that she would not have abandoned them. Leona also had a full week of landscaping appointments booked for the week after she vanished. Despite her independent nature, Leona struggled with dependency on alcohol and drugs. Her daughter Carolyn believes that Leona met with foul play, and that the person responsible was a local alleged drug dealer. In 2008, Leona's family and friends, with the help of the Blue Mountain Sundance Society, held a memorial service for her, both to honor her memory and hopefully inspire people with information in the case to come forward. In 2015, Carolyn spoke with the La Grande Observer for a feature on her mother's case. These efforts have so far not resulted in Leona's disappearance being solved. In 1988, Betsy Owens was 15 years old and living in the Pangassi First Nation in Manitoba. She had 3 sisters and loved listening to music and going swimming. On Saturday, October 22nd, she left her family home. A police report says that she was going to play volleyball at a nearby school, but her family claims she was going to a school dance. Around 11 p.m., she and her boyfriend went to his house, where they spent the night. Betsy left early the next morning. Her boyfriend was the last known person to see her. She never arrived home, and there has been no sign of her since. Extensive searches of the area were performed right after Betsy went missing, and another series of searches were conducted between 1996 and 1997. The Royal Canadian Mounted Police have told Betsy's family that they believe foul play is involved in her disappearance, but they do not have enough evidence to make any arrests. One of Betsy's sisters provided DNA to authorities in 2013. Betsy's father has since passed away, never learning what happened to his daughter. Larissa Lonehill was a 21-year-old mother to a 2-year-old daughter. She was the 3rd youngest out of 8 children and loved caring for her family members. She lived in Manderson, South Dakota, on the Pine Ridge Reservation, but would often travel to Rapid City to see family. She would sometimes stay with her sister Carol, but in mid-September 2016, the sisters had an argument, and Carol demanded that Larissa leave her home. On October 2nd, Larissa and her mother had a conversation about the disagreement in Rapid City, after which Larissa left with her boyfriend and a friend to go to the Rushmore Mall. The following morning, October 3rd, Larissa sent a text to one of her cousins, saying that she was with 2 male friends of hers she knew from Pine Ridge. The 2 men picked her up at her boyfriend's house. According to her boyfriend, she introduced one of the men to him as her cousin. It would later be determined that the man was not related to Larissa. Larissa's boyfriend could not find or reach her after she left with the 2 men, so he reached out to her family. One of Larissa's brothers reported her missing a few days later. The 2 men who picked up Larissa on October 3rd were interviewed by police. One said he dropped her off at a party, and the other denied having seen her at all that day. Larissa's family believes the 2 men were involved with illegal drugs. They claim to have seen text messages from the men that support these claims. Larissa could not work a traditional job because she had lost her identification card, so her family was unsure of how she managed to make money. While Larissa was a doting aunt and mother, she was beginning to go down a path that concerned those close to her. The argument that resulted in Larissa being asked to leave her sister's house began when one of their brothers told Carol that Larissa had been smoking meth in her bathroom. In April 2017, the Rapid City Police Department announced a $5,000 reward in Larissa's case. While they specified that her case was still classified as a missing persons case and not a homicide investigation, they did say that they believed Larissa to be dead and buried within a 100-mile radius of Rapid City. They would not disclose what led them to this conclusion, so as to protect their investigation. Desiree, Oldwoman, lived on the Siksika First Nation Reserve in southern Alberta. She was autistic and nonverbal, but was still able to communicate her friendly nature and enthusiastic spirit to those in her community in other ways. She was the oldest of 4 children and was close with her brothers and sister. She was known for her love of things that smelled nice, and liked to carry a shopping bag filled with her favorite perfumes and air fresheners with her. Desiree was unable to care for herself independently, so after her mother passed away in 2007, she went to live with her grandmother. She was still living with her in 2011, when she was 21 years old. Desiree was last seen around 8:20 p.m. on the night of Saturday, August 27, 2011, inside of her home. Her grandmother believed she must have wandered away from the house, and members of the community performed an extensive search of the area. When she was not found, search and rescue was called in. The Royal Canadian Mounted Police spent 2 days searching a larger area on foot, using specially trained dogs. An air search was also performed. None of these searches found any sign of Desiree. The RCMP has speculated that Desiree may have found her way to nearby Highway 901. There, she could have been picked up by a passing motorist. While Desiree was nonverbal, she could write her name, so if she had been taken to the police or a shelter, she would have been able to identify herself. If she had been taken elsewhere by someone who discovered her walking along the highway, it was not to the proper authorities, as she has not been seen since leaving her home. Olivia Williams, of British Columbia's Lake Babine Nation, lost her mother as a small child, and struggled with never getting the chance to really get to know her. Despite this, she had an outgoing and jovial personality, and loved spending time with her family. By 1996, however, the 22-year-old was living alone in Vancouver. She had gotten involved in the drug and sex work scene in the city's downtown East Side. Olivia was last seen in December of 1996 and reported missing in 1997. The Vancouver police believe that Olivia met with foul play. They suspect that she may have been a victim of the infamous Robert Pickton. Pickton, who is currently serving a life sentence for 6 murders, confessed to an undercover agent to 49 murders, but only 27 victims have been tied to him and his pig farm through DNA. Most of his victims were indigenous women who worked as sex workers in Vancouver's downtown East Side. While Olivia fits this description, there is no evidence tying her to Pickton, and his involvement in her disappearance is purely a theory. Olivia's status with police still lists her as missing. Olivia's father and brother remain in contact with the police and look for her whenever they are in Vancouver.